All right, Turbo Camaro Bodywork, either part 3 or part 4, I'm losing track. But yep, we're getting everything sanded out. We got the doors pretty much finished up as far as structural. Josh is working on this rear quarter. He's got a good amount of all these dents pulled out. This is looking really straight back here. But we've got a little bit of filler work to do here, so he's about to mix up some filler for that. And then I want to show you guys what we did on the lower rocker on this side. We got it sanded out, and if you remember, there's a pretty big crease right here. Basically from here all the way up into here. We stud gunned it with the actual weld-on studs, and then slide hammered it out. If you look closely, I had one that I actually burned through. It's not a big deal. I just tack welded it back closed, built it up, and ground it down. So now what Josh is going to do is start mixing up the filler we can start putting the filler in down here for this and for that rear quarter.
So this is all metal, metal and reinforced filler. For bigger areas like this is what you would use that filler for. It's really strong, built with metal in it. So you always want to stir it up real good, whether you just used it or not. Always make sure it's stirred up. Lay it out kind of flat.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've always noticed is if you get like a little hard chunk in your body filler, man, that just smears every time you're trying to feather it out.
And with that, it's just by kind of keeping that clean, it helps you keeping the hardener away from there. Just put a few drops here and there. You don't need to go crazy with it. So what I tend to do is kind of swirl it all around, pick it up, smash it in, and then just keep smashing, swirl. Work that hardener right in there.
Yep, and you always want to make sure, see Josh is using like paper here. You're always starting off with a new sheet. You always want to make sure your material you're mixing on and your spreaders are always really clean. Anytime you get foreign debris in your filler, you're just making problems for yourself. So
with these, you can throw them in a cup of thinner, or let this harden, break all of it off. But after it builds up so much, throw them in a cup of thinner. Don't leave it overnight because they will swell and melt like soft on you. But get them cleaned back up and you can reuse them.
And one thing you'll notice is Josh just switched from the one he was mixing with to now one that he's going to use to actually spread the filler.
And as I'm doing this with the filler, you kind of want to push a little hard to get it in there really good, especially those little dimples.
Yep, he's just trying to make sure there's no air pockets or any open space in that filler. It just really helps to make sure, you've got to make sure your foundation's good. It's just like building a house, you've got to start from your foundation and make sure you have really good material there. So that's why he's using this all metal filler. It's actually something I've never used and didn't even know about, so this is a good tip for you guys. There's a lot of ways to do this, but the better materials you use, the better work you do at your foundation, just the better everything's going to turn out. So this is just another example of that.
And speaking of foundation, if you notice, we sanded out quite a bit of our work or the painted area because you're always going to take your filler further than what you even think or plan on. As far as that goes, that will be pretty good. It's going to harden up really hard. Hit it up tomorrow, start sanding it down.
Yep.
Break it open with some 180.
Yep, so just like what he's saying there is this will harden up, and then you'll work that in, kind of get your rough shape, or you'll get most of your shape all out of that. Then you go back with a lighter filler on top of that, just a real skim coat just to finish it up from there. So it's just making sure you have a really good foundation. You're not going to have bodywork that splits out on you. That's one thing you'll see is, man, I've seen cars with 1/4 inch thick of body filler, and just doing that, A, is not good, and then B, they're doing that with just like light body filler, which is
this right here that we're about to.
Yep, which is the lighter stuff over here, which is not at all what this is made for. This is just made for your real skim coats, just filling in light dents, not massive craters.
Right. So if you see, it's a little gold there. When I first opened this up, there was a lot of that gold
separating
in there. Just like I said again, mix it up really good.
Yeah, just making sure it's mixed up, making sure your materials are clean, always starting with the fresh everything, your spreader, your mixer, your sheets. Just keeping contaminants out of your fillers is just always a good tip. And the other thing is not getting in too much of a rush. We prepped, make sure we picked up the tools, and we're prepared for this step, not getting ahead of ourselves and tripping over a grinder on the ground or a hose laying around, or where's my mixer, where's the hardener. Just make sure you take your time and think each step out. But one thing I always kind of struggle with is laying the filler out in an adequate fashion where you're not putting too much on and too little on. And that's something my dad kind of has the same problem with. Is it seems like we either put too much on or too little on. And it's just something you learn over time. It's a skill that's built off of doing this. It's like anything. The more you do it, you get a feel for it, and you just kind of learn from there.
As far as doing too much, yeah, it's wasted material, but, and again, he said, learning, knowing how much to use, that's definitely something you learn, but it's not, in the world, using a little too much, in a sense.
Yeah, you can always sand off the material if you have too much, but if you don't put enough on, now you're restarting this process, so you don't want to do that. But you'll learn. You're going to make those mistakes. It's all fixable, so that's the thing. It's just making sure you fix it before you put your base coat on. Really, you want to have it in pretty decent shape before you put your primer on. But obviously, you can go back and fix things in the primer. That's not an issue at all.
So I just got a few little low spot here. It's pretty much there. I'm just gonna kind of go back from here, kind of just work it in a little. For this stuff, you don't have to press like I showed you on the all metal.
Yep, this stuff's a lighter filler, so you just don't need as much force, and it's for lighter body work, so you're not using it for large dents, so you're not really trying to work it in as hard. You're really just trying to lay this out smooth, and just trying to get your surface flat with this. So this stuff will sand off really quick, and you can see how thin that layer is already, and even most of this will get sanded off. You're just going to block this out just enough to make that line straight again.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that this area is probably the real cause,
Yep.
kind of go back over that and then just rework my line again. Smoothing it out.
And you'll notice like these little guys off the side, I just let that stuff harden up because you can knock that right off, or you can clean it up with your spreader, but you don't really have to worry about that stuff. It'll sand right off, it'll chip right off. That stuff's just not something you really got to concern yourself about. You want me to hold that open?
Sure.
I'm standing in his light a little bit. You want me to move this light a little bit?
Actually, I like it for you.
Okay.
Just because I'm using that light as far as I'm putting that light where I want by just moving my head.
Got it. Yep, and that's one other thing that's key is having a good light or lights. You got to be able to see what you're doing with this filler. The paint is really going to show everything, so you want to make sure you're doing your best to see everything now, because as soon as you put that paint on, it's going to highlight everything. So good lighting always is key. And one thing I've always noticed is lights like this will actually show a lot more than what the sunlight normally does. So if it looks good with lighting like this, it's going to look good under the sun.
Yep.
I think that's about it. We got some filler down. We got that big crease out of the lower rocker. We're gonna let that harden up and come back. Again, you can see how much straighter this quarter is. This quarter was a bit of a mess of just little dings, little dents, little waves, little creases. Yep, the antenna. I mean, I've already forgot about that. It looks so good with that removed. Just all those little details are really what make it. And again, just not getting ahead of yourself. Just taking your time with it and working it out.
And if you do have a problem with laying this out, I use a little less hardener. I'll give you more time to work with.
Yep.
And it's totally fine to use less. I tend to mix it maybe a little hotter just because I like to get after it a lot faster.
Yep.
But too hot can make it shrink and then pop later on in the year from now or whatever. It's not as good. But mixing it a little less will give you more time to work with. If you're not familiar with it, that's the easier way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where, for me, I probably normally mix it a little slower because I'm a little slower with it. It takes me some time. Like how quickly he just knocked this out, I would struggle with that. So again, it's just repetitiveness. Josh has got a lot of body experience, and he can really knock these things out quick. I think that's about it for tonight. We're going to wrap a few things up here, but just wanted to give you guys an update of the progress. I'm still waiting on that release agent before we can get this guy patched up. We'll put the release agent on here, put some of that matting in there and get that patched up, and then add some bracing there. I might cut this out a little bit bigger because it's real close to that charge tube, and depending which way you put those front clamps on, the T-bolt clamps, sometimes they would get into this right here. So I'm gonna work on that a little bit. Got a few other little ideas for the hood, but yeah, things coming along. One thing I didn't mention, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but we are going to go back with the original color of the paint. Basically, same paint scheme. I like the color. Makes it a little bit easier than a full color change, but the real key is I just like the color. It's what the car is known for, and I've always liked it. So we'll probably add a little bit of black on the hood, but I'll show you guys that later. That's really going to be about it. Same emblems, really the same look, just a fresh, clean look with a lot less dents and waves in the quarters. So that'll be it for tonight, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I appreciate it. Keep it saucy.